Order. 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 Alors, we perhaps could have a round of shh. The honourable member for Oakville North Burlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On February the 15th, 1965, our national flag was raised for the first time on Parliament Hill. In 1996, February 15th was officially designated National Flag of Canada Day, thanks in large part to the advocacy of former MP for Parkdale High Park and current Oakville North Burlington resident Jessie Fliss. At the official ceremony inaugurating the new Canadian flag in 1965, the Honourable Maurice Bourget, Speaker of the Senate, said, "The flag is the symbol of the nation's unity, for it, beyond any doubt, represents all the citizens of Canada without distinction of race, language, belief, or opinion." Residents are invited to drop into my community office and pick up a flag poster to display throughout our 150th anniversary to honour and show pride in our flag, a beacon of strength, fairness, diversity and freedom at home and around the world.
Okay. The honourable member for Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel.
The honourable member for Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel. Mr. Speaker, I would like to mark the loss of a great man who had one vision, two countries, and three passions. More than anything, Roy Lacko Heenan wanted to achieve his vision of a law firm where everyone spent their days combining their thirst for excellence, entrepreneurial dynamism, and the pleasure of working together. Possessing a keen intellect, prodigious energy, and exceptional willpower, Roy Heenan traced the phenomenal development of the Heenan Blakey law firm. A native of Mexico and an ardent promoter of his country of adoption, he was made an officer of the Order of Canada following recognition of exceptional contribution to his three passions: labor rights, visual arts, and academic life.
You to salute the passing of Roy Heenan, a man bigger than life, a great Canadian, and indeed a man for all seasons.
The honourable member for Milton. No problem.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard from residents in my riding of Milton and other Canadians who feel that their health care needs are being neglected and they feel forgotten by this Liberal government. I implore the government in its upcoming budget to make the investments needed to right these wrongs. Now is the time to implement a national dementia strategy based on the recommendations of the Senate report and support it with steady, reliable funding. Now is the time for the Canadian Autism Partnership, which addresses key issues such as information sharing and research, early detection, diagnosis and treatment, while supporting families of Canadians living with autism. Now is the time to tackle the challenge of rare diseases by investing in early diagnosis, access to treatment, and research for those suffering from rare diseases. Canadians are waiting, Mr. Speaker. Let's get to work.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On February 15, 1965, Canada chose its new flag. Of the 365 days in the year, it had to choose that particular day. Canada chose as its signature the day that 5 patriots were hung. Through its odious attempt to steal this day from Quebecers, it profanes the memory of our heroes. Chevalier de Lorimier, Charles Hindenlag, Amable Daunet, François Nicolas, and Pierre-Émile Narbonne were hanged because they loved their people, because they fought for it, and because they wanted freedom and were enemies of oppression. On this, the 150th anniversary of Canada, that it was built on the backs of the unsubmissive. Canada gave itself a flag on February 15th, but we as independentists have a rallying cry: long live liberty and independence.
Murdered Women and Girls Memorial March was organized in Vancouver's downtown east side. And now, 27 years later, the march has spread across the nation into dozens of communities from coast to coast. It's not a mistake that the date for the march is February 14th. Valentine's Day is a day where we celebrate love. For the families of the missing and murdered women, on this day and every day, their hearts ache for the loss of their loved ones. Since the 1970s, over 3,000 women have gone missing or were murdered. And to this day, hundreds of cases involving Indigenous women and girls remain unresolved. To honor their memory, we need to stop all forms of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual violence against women. We need a national inquiry that's led by the family and community members, an inquiry that validates their experiences and knowledge, support their journey to healing, honor their loss by providing answers, and a commitment to real and meaningful action. Real justice means no more.
The honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate the work of the Bring on the Sunshine Festival, a grassroots event that fosters a positive and creative space within our community for people of African descent to explore identity and heritage through the arts while celebrating African culture and identity within a Canadian context. Bring on the Sunshine showcases artisans and musicians and acts as an opportunity for our community to come together in celebration during Black History Month. There is something for everyone to enjoy, from live music and drumming workshops to freshly prepared food. Thank you to the organizers, community donors, officials, and volunteers who have once again come together to put on this amazing event. The festival is on Family Day, February the 20th, and I would like to invite all my colleagues, and indeed all Canadians, to come to Kitchener this Monday to celebrate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Carleton.
In 1991, a brilliant and athletic Michelle Stilwell became paralyzed by a terrible accident and was condemned to a wheelchair. But she decided not to let it keep her down. In fact, she went on to compete in multiple Paralympic Games, in which she was successful at securing 6 gold medals and 1 silver, in addition to multiple world records. On top of that, she's a minister in the British Columbian government, a member of the legislature in that province, and a mother. She's one of over 1 million disabled Canadians who works. She's an inspiration. Unfortunately, she's retiring from her athletic career, but fortunately, she will continue to serve the people of British Columbia as a minister and a member of the Legislative Assembly. So we wish her well in her athletic retirement, and we look forward to working with her for continued service for people all across this country by an inspiring Canadian. Congratulations, Michelle.
The honourable member for Pickering-Uxbridge.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this month I attended the Claremont Beef Dinner at Legion Branch 483, where I had the honor of announcing over $36,000 in support of an important local project. This funding, made possible through the Enabling Accessibility Fund, will support the Legion as it constructs an exterior ramp, installs a lift, and builds an accessible washroom and barrier-free corridor. Accessibility issues have always been of the utmost importance to me, and I'm proud that since the creation of the Enabling Accessibility Fund, the government has helped thousands of Canadians gain access to community programs, services, and workplaces. I'd like to especially thank Karen Miller and Sandy Hill from the Claremont Legion for all of their fantastic work on this project. This support, coupled with generous contributions from the community, organizations, residents, will ensure veterans, children, and adults with disabilities will be able to access such important facility in our riding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Malpeque.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to congratulate Islander David Thompson, granted the Distinguished Alumni Award at the Dalhousie Faculty of Agriculture. This most prestigious award recognizes outstanding service and commitment to the Faculty of Agriculture, Industry, and the Alumni Association. Mr. Thompson's career in agriculture began after graduation from NSAC in 1970. He entered the crop protection industry, providing technical support in the Maritimes, Quebec, and Maine. Well known and respected among potato and cereal grain growers across the country, he was a champion for environmental issues. Currently president of the World Potato Congress, Dave also served locally as president of PEI Grain Elevators Corporation, promoting the grain and soybean industry of Prince Edward Island. Allegedly retired, Mr. Thompson works and volunteers with numerous organizations and is as busy as ever. We thank Dave Thompson for his exceptional service and commitment to PEI, the agriculture industry, and the environment.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabasca. Mr. Speaker, for 10 years now, Quebec mobilizes for educational success of our young people during Hooked On School Days. These days are celebrated every year during the third week of February. The objective of that week is to mobilize all of society around young people to talk to them about effort, perseverance, and the advantage of having a high school diploma. It's also a way to remind the public that scholarly perseverance is everybody's business. Everyone needs encouragement. As a former teacher and school principal, I can tell you that we are counting on a wonderful youth that will accomplish great things for society. So I invite elected officials, business people, teachers, educators, principals, stakeholders, community groups, parents, coaches, and everyone else who works with you to make education a priority, because youth are our future and our pride.
Honourable Member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's with a heavy heart that I rise today in recognition of Irvin Fraser, better known as Jubal. Irvin was a Winnipeg Transit bus driver, Mr. Speaker, and as members will fully know, had passed away because of an incident in his bus. I think it's important for us to recognize that transit bus workers across this great nation share in terms of the sympathy to the family and the friends of the late Irvin, given the fact that every day in Canada we have buses that go through our major municipalities and smaller municipalities, opening their doors, ensuring that we have the best quality public transportation system in the world, Mr. Speaker. It's such with a heavy heart that I extend my personal condolences and the condolences on behalf of the rest of my colleagues to the family and friends and to the many others that have been so much affected by this most recent tragedy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise as a former Air Cadet to recognize the hard work of the Queen's York Rangers 2799 Army Cadet Corps of Ontario, Aurora, Ontario. I was honoured to be a reviewing officer at the Corps' annual parade last year, and this Corps, for the third time in 4 years, was awarded the Clary Trophy for Top Large Army Cadet Corps in Ontario. This is an outstanding achievement. The cadet program focuses on developing citizenship and leadership, promoting physical fitness, and encouraging interest in the air, sea, land elements of the Canadian Forces for youth 12 to 19 years. This Corps' motto of results, not excuses, paid off as they have raised enough money to travel to France for the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Vimy Ridge. Congratulations to the Queen's York Rangers 2799 Army Cadet Corps, and thank you for being exemplary citizens and leaders in our community.
The Honourable Member for York Simcoe.
Today, Canadians will mark the 52nd anniversary of the Canadian flag. Canada has known several flags throughout our history. At Confederation 150 years ago, the Union Jack was flown as our flag. At Vimy Ridge and in World War II, our troops fought under different versions of the Red Ensign. The maple leaf was already a symbol of Canada dating back to the 1700s, from its use as the emblem of the Saint Jean-Baptiste Society to its place in Alexander Muir's patriotic song, The Maple Leaf Forever. That maple leaf became the focus of the country's new flag in 1965. While the product of a divisive debate, for 52 years now, the maple leaf flag has been a unifying symbol representing Canada, recognized the world over. Canadians are modest about their patriotism, but hundreds of thousands of homes, including mine, proudly fly the Canadian flag, today on Flag Day and on every other day of the year.
Honourable Member for Brampton West.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate the life of a very dear friend and a constituent of Brampton West, Molly Chatterjee. Molly was born with Down syndrome. This did not stop her from making an impact on many lives. Molly was very involved in our community, feeding the homeless, helping at senior citizens' home, and providing warm meals at women's shelter. I had a pleasure of meeting Molly during our election campaign. All of our volunteers will never forget Molly's ever-smiling face and her compassionate and warm hugs. I was overcome with great sadness when I learned that Molly had passed away on Christmas Day in her home. I offer my sincere condolences to Molly's parents, Prabhat and Madhuri, her brother Prasenjit, and her sister-in-law Tanuja, and her very dear niece, Priyasi, who she adored. Molly, you will be forever missed by your friends and families, lives you have touched forever by your warm and kind heart. Rest in peace, my friend.
The Honourable Member for Outremont. Mr. Speaker, it's with great pride that I rise today to salute the fact that Montreal has just been crowned the best city in the world for university students. Montreal is the first city to displace Paris from the top rank since this international ranking has been published annually. Montreal is indeed unique because of its quality of life, its cultural diversity, and its world-class universities in both official languages.
In fact, Canada's big university cities performed very well overall in this international ranking. Vancouver and Toronto took the 10th and 11th spots, respectively. Our cities are global in every sense and welcoming because fundamentally we are a country of diversity, peace, and inclusion. Let's stay that way. Bravo.
Bravo and congratulations, Montreal.
Honourable Member for Battleford, Lloydminster.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians welcome the news today of the European Parliament approving the comprehensive trade agreement between Canada and the EU. This House overwhelmingly approved CETA just yesterday. I'd like to thank the Liberal government for recognizing how important this deal is for Canadian jobs. A special mention to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and to the Minister of International Trade, who will continue this valuable work. This would not have been possible without the vision and ambition of our former Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Stephen Harper. CETA was conceived, negotiated and concluded under his leadership and that of the members and friends of mine from Abbotsford and York Simcoe. The heavy lifting was done by our world-class trade negotiators. Led by Steve Verhoeven, his team worked tirelessly on this historic agreement. To people like Steve, it becomes part of their DNA, and in turn a part of our history and success as a free trade nation. I'm proud to have been involved in such a historic agreement. Let's not stop with CETA. Let's also move forward with our allies in the Asia-Pacific and make Canada the gateway to North America for both Europe and Asia.
Honourable Member for Kitchener South Hespeler.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the contributions of two exceptional Waterloo Regional volunteers, Diane Bonfonte and Gloria Rudney, founders of the Flag Wavers of Waterloo Region. In addition to their tireless work for multiple community organizations, they have a long history of involvement in organizing the Flag Day and Canada Day events in our region. Today is the 52nd anniversary of the first time our flag was raised on Parliament Hill. During the 150th anniversary of Confederation, let's celebrate our flag. I invite all Canadians to search online for Flag Wavers of Waterloo Region and listen to their video of students at Kitchener-Smithson Public School singing about our flag. Then post a picture or a video of yourself with the flag and inspire others to do the same. Hashtag Canadian Flag. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well said.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Canada has a lot at stake with our relationship with the United States, and Canadians are worried because while the U.S. is lowering taxes, the Prime Minister is raising them here in Canada. And that's what happens when you have a spending problem. There's nothing left when an emergency happens. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister stop raising taxes on our businesses so they can compete with the Americans?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, our record on taxes is quite clear. We've lowered taxes on middle-class Canadians. It was the very first thing we did. We know that helping middle-class Canadians is critically important to the future of this country. That's why we move forward with that tax reduction. That's why we move forward with the Canada Child Benefit, which helps 9 out of 10 families. We also know that keeping a competitive tax rate for business is important, and that is a continuing focus of our government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there is only one thing that is clear about taxes in this country, and that is that they are going up. Now, we know that the President says he wants to tweak NAFTA. We don't know quite what that means yet, but we do know that he has plans to lower taxes and cut regulations. So my question is simple. Can the Prime Minister name one single economic policy that he's changed since the election of President Trump to protect our economy from Trump's low-tax agenda?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, this past Monday was a very important day for Canada and for Canadians. We recognize the importance of our economic relationship with the United States, the importance for jobs, the importance for economic growth on both sides of the border. We express to the Americans our willingness to work together in terms of making sure that our trade relationship improves over time so that we can help middle-class Canadians and middle-class Americans with good, well-paying jobs for tomorrow that will be better for both of our economies.
Yes. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is spending a lot more money than he said he would. He promised to borrow only $10 billion a year and to balance the budget by 2019. But now at the rate that he's spending, he won't balance the books for 30 years. And he's raising taxes on Canadians to pay for all of this. Does the Prime Minister understand that all this borrowing has to be paid back by hardworking Canadians?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize that in order to create good-paying jobs for middle-class Canadians, we have to have an economy that's working. We know that making investments in our economy is critically important. So what we've seen over the last year, since December 2015, is 277,300 new jobs in our economy. What we saw in January is we saw our unemployment rate decline from 6.9 to 6.8%. Mr. Speaker, we are making investments in our economy to help middle-class Canadians today and tomorrow.
Yes. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, older, smaller, and poorer. Those aren't my words. They're the words of the Mayor of Vegreville about the fate that awaits the town if the Liberals close the immigration centre. He warns of a crash in home values and an exodus of students and young people. It will be a devastating blow to the people and the future of this small community. And the Mayor said this, quote, "This is exactly the opposite of what the government promised to do for rural Canada in the last election." So why is the Prime Minister attacking rural Canada?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the case processing centre in Vegreville, of course we understand that this change will have an impact on staff and their families, but we're working very hard to make sure that we minimize those impacts. That is why all full-time employees in the current case processing centre will have their jobs available to them in Edmonton, which is 1 hour away. We continue to engage the community, and in the new location, not only will we be able to expand our immigration services, we will be able to create more jobs for Alberta.
L'Honorable Chef de l'Opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Minister to come to Vegreville so that he can get a sense of what we're talking about. This isn't just an impact on these employees. This is an impact on the entire town of Vegreville. It will crash home values. There will be an exodus of students and young people. It will be a devastating blow to the people and the future of this small rural community. So I ask him, will he come and visit, face the people of Vegreville, face the Mayor, and explain to him why he's attacking rural Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I met with the local union representative for Vegreville, as well as a staff member 2 days ago. I have spoken with the Mayor of Vegreville. I understand that this change will have an impact on staff and their families. That is why we're committed to going ahead to make sure that we help the community with those impacts, minimize those impacts. I can assure the honourable member that all full-time employees will have their jobs available to them 1 hour away in Edmonton, and the new location will have more immigration processing and more jobs.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Mr. Speaker, on the heels of the Prime Minister's visit with Donald Trump, the Liberal government is continuing to deny that American immigration policies have direct impacts on Canada. The Prime Minister refuses to stand up against Trump's Muslim ban. The Immigration Minister refuses to repeal the Safe Third Country Agreement. And the Public Safety Minister refuses to raise cases of Canadians being turned away at the border with his American counterparts. Why is this Liberal government turning a blind eye to these obviously discriminatory and hateful U.S. immigration policies?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman is just plainly, flatly wrong. I've indicated over and over again that we will collect the data about Canadians who feel in some way that they have been mistreated at the American border, and that issue will be raised with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security.
Member for Outremont.
Promises, promises. It's not what they say they will do, it's what they didn't do on Monday, Mr. Speaker.
On Monday, I met with Yassine Aber. He was turned away at the U.S. border. He's a brilliant young man and a young athlete. He wasn't turned away because he had committed a crime. No. He wasn't turned away because he had done anything or not done anything. He was turned away because his parents came from Morocco. It's shameful that this Liberal government is refusing to call out this blatant discrimination. Why won't the Liberals do anything to ensure that Canadians are not treated this way?
Mr. Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, simply repeating a falsehood does not make it any truer. The fact of the matter is that when Canadians are treated unfairly or feel they've been treated unfairly at a border crossing, they have an appeal procedure that is available to them, and in addition to that, those cases will be raised by me directly with the Department of Homeland Security, and we're in the process of arranging a meeting for that purpose right now.
Honourable Member for Outremont.
From the U.S. Border Services said that Yassine Aber did not have a valid Canadian passport. I saw that document. I also saw his passport that's valid until 2026, Mr. Speaker. The Ethics Commissioner has opened another investigation into the Prime Minister's exclusive vacation. It is the second time, and this is unprecedented, that our Prime Minister is under investigation. Will he now admit to breaking two different laws, and will he finally take responsibility for his actions, or is he going to blame it all on some guy named Joe?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as has been said by the Prime Minister time and time again, the Prime Minister will respond to any questions that the Commissioner has. This government is focused on working for Canadians, responding to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. We will continue to work hard and deliver on our commitments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Canadians are asking about their Prime Minister who has broken the law again, Mr. Speaker.
This Prime Minister promised to usher in a new era of transparency and ethics. But now we've got not one but two separate investigations into the Prime Minister himself. I'll help the Liberals get away from their talking points for a minute by trying a different approach. What would the Liberals have said if it had been Stephen Harper who had broken the law twice? The Honourable Government Leader in the House. Mr. Speaker, as has been said several times, the Prime Minister will answer all the questions that the Ethics Commissioner will ask him. Our government and our Prime Minister are here to work hard for Canadians and to meet the real challenges that they are facing. We will continue to work for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is too much noise.
It's quiet.
Please quiet down a bit.
Lac Saint-Jean.
The Honourable Member for Lac Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, well, there was a second great meeting in Washington, and what was the result of all of these meetings? Well, there were no good results. Our Prime Minister said that he was ready for everything and ready to deal with NAFTA, and Trump has only asked for minor negotiations. But what do we actually see on the table? They're going there to negotiate, and what will actually be on the table? Will it be softwood lumber? We've heard about supply management. So what's the truth? What is really on the table and what is going to be renegotiated?
So how about that?
Speaker, our government had a productive and important meeting with the President on Monday. Let me remind this House that the President assured Canada and the world that we have a very outstanding trade relationship with Canada. As for NAFTA, it's important for all of us to take note of the fact that neither Wilbur Ross, the nominee for Secretary of Commerce, or the U.S. Trade Representative have yet to be confirmed. Nor has the U.S. formally initiated a NAFTA negotiation process. If and when that happens, Mr. Speaker, Canada will be ready.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Americans aren't embarrassed to say what was discussed. Following the meeting with the Foreign Affairs Minister, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Paul Ryan, said the following.
How we can embrace these ties, including by improving dairy market access. We said that, Paul Ryan, if you're unable to answer Parliamentary Secretary, Paul Ryan is doing it. What have you put on the table, please?
I remind the member for Lac-Saint-Jean to direct his comments to the chair, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Canada-U.S. Relations.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, as was indicated by my colleague, it's true that our government had a very important and productive meeting with the President on Monday. Allow me to remind this House that the President reassured everyone that we have an exceptional trading relationship between our two countries. And on the subject of NAFTA, it's important to note that neither Wilbur Ross nor the representative of Foreign Affairs for Trade have been confirmed yet. So the U.S. has not yet undertaken the process of renegotiating NAFTA. And if and when that happens...
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' spending is out of control. The Liberals' plan will lead to only higher deficits and debt. Now, to pay for all of this, Liberals are planning on raising taxes and user fees for everyone. They keep claiming to want to help the middle class. Mr. Speaker, if this is their definition of help, they should stop. Canadians just cannot afford it. Will the Finance Minister stop wasting Canadians' money and stop taxing those who can least afford it?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, what we will do is continue to fight for middle-class families, to improve their lot in life today, to make investments that will help them tomorrow. To be clear, on taxes, we lower taxes on middle-class Canadians. To be clear, for the 9 out of 10 families that are getting the Canada Child Benefit, they're getting an average $2,300 more per year. Every month, they're having a better situation for their families, and we're starting to see that across the country. Mr. Speaker, we will continue with these efforts on behalf of Canadian families this year and in the years to come.
The member for Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have already raised taxes on Canadian families. They've imposed a carbon tax and they've raised payroll taxes. The Finance Minister says that everything is on the table as they negotiate Budget 2017. Today, we call upon the Minister to at least commit that he will not attack families' ability to save for their children's future, their education. Can the Finance Minister tell us that he will not touch the Registered Education Savings Plan?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, what we can say to Canadians and what we've said to Canadians is that we are going to continue to work to improve their situation. When we reduced taxes on middle-class Canadians, we did it knowing they'd have more money in their pockets every month. When we gave them more money to raise their children, we knew that would help them with what they really need. That will be our continuing focus on how we can help families. That will be executed through our next budget and the budgets to come.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The best way that the Finance Minister could reassure Canadians is to speak plainly to them. But each time we ask specific questions about tax credits that Canadians have, the Minister is evasive. It's been 2.5 weeks since we've been asking him questions about seniors, about pension income splitting, and tax credits for seniors, and the Minister has never given a clear answer. This time, will the Minister finally reassure Canadian seniors? The Honourable Minister of Social Development. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his interest in the fate of seniors. There are some very specific statistics that I would be happy to provide. By making the age of eligibility for OAS 65 years, we're helping seniors in extreme poverty. By increasing the GIS by 10%, we're bringing 13,000 seniors out of poverty. By investing $200,000 in housing for seniors, we are improving their quality of life for seniors and their families and the communities in which they live.
Louis Saint Laurent.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Yes, but it's the grandchildren of those seniors who will be paying for this government's bad management, because if you can't control spending, as is the case with the current government, there are two solutions. Either you get control of your spending, or you take more money from the pockets of taxpayers. What the government is doing is increasing taxes on Canadians. And it's, in fact, an internal memo from the Treasury Board that said that. Can the minister stand up and say that he doesn't intend to increase taxes on Canadians or place new fees on them? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, as I said, we lowered taxes for the middle class in Canada. That was a very important measure. We will continue to make investments to grow our economy. This is very important for jobs today and in the future. More jobs mean a better quality of life for people, and it means that students will also have a better future. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, for months we've been raising questions about provisions in CETA that would harm Canadians, with no reassurances from this minister. This government has refused to address the increased cost of prescription drugs for Canadians and ignored calls for the removal of investor state rules. These controversial rules give foreign companies privileged access to our governments in exclusive courts. Mr. Speaker, trade with Europe is too important to get wrong, and EU member states have made it clear they won't accept CETA with investor state rules. Does the minister agree that they should be removed?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for International Trade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are very pleased with the vote in the European Parliament today. I'm very pleased with the vote on CETA in this House yesterday. The Minister is in Strasbourg meeting with our European counterparts. The Prime Minister will be there tomorrow to deliver an address on the importance of the Canada-EU relationship. CETA is the most progressive trade agreement ever signed by Canada and the EU. It will create tens of thousands of jobs. It will create greater prosperity for Canadians. It will help grow the middle class. Today is a very good day. Thank you.
Bravo.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to protecting our supply management system, we have heard no clear reassurances from the Prime Minister during his trip to Washington or before leaving for Europe. And worse, there are indications that there will be serious violations of that supply management system. As more than 17,000 tons of cheese flood the Canadian market and inadequate compensation has been given to dairy farmers, are we to understand that the Liberal government will sacrifice our supply management system? Yes or no? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, we're proud to have invested $350 million to help dairy producers and our artisanal cheese producers. This is increasing our long-term competitivity. These programs help dairy producers and processors protect themselves from the effects of imports from the EU under CETA. These programs were developed following feedback from consultations with the dairy sector. They aim to make strategic investments in the dairy industry and to make the sector more productive and competitive.
Mr. Speaker, for the first time in the history of our country, a sitting Prime Minister is under multiple active ethics investigations. This Prime Minister has zero respect for ethics and ethical standards. This Prime Minister believes he is above regular, everyday, law-abiding Canadians, and the rules simply don't apply to him. So when will the Prime Minister admit that he broke the law and finally answer Canadians' questions about his unethical behaviour?
Great question. Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as has been said time and time again, the Prime Minister will answer any questions that the Commissioner has. What has also been stated many times, and what we will continue to do, is work hard for middle-class Canadians to respond to the very real challenges that they are facing. We will continue on the plan and the mandate Canadians have given us. That's why we lowered taxes on middle-class Canadians. That's why we introduced the Canada Child Benefit to help families with children that need it the most. We will continue to invest in Canadians, Canadian communities to help grow the economy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, a Prime Minister who values integrity and transparency does what he says and says what he does. But we have a Prime Minister who believes he's above the law, who acts without thinking, and who says contradictory things when it comes to justifying his conduct to Canadians. Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister stop hiding behind his talking points, stop claiming that he's answering all of the Ethics Commissioner's questions, and finally explain to Canadians here in this House why he believes he is above the law? The Honourable Government Leader in the House. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said that we would work hard for the middle class and hard for Canadians, and that is what we're doing. That's why we lowered taxes for the middle class. That's why we're working with Canadians and families with children who need that help, and we will continue to work hard for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we know the Prime Minister will be forced to answer the Ethics Commissioner's questions because that's what happens when you're under investigation by the Ethics Commissioner. But this Prime Minister needs to answer Canadians. His own platform said, as the head of government, the Prime Minister represents all Canadians and should be directly accountable to them. So I'm going to give him a chance to answer a simple question. Did anybody in the Prime Minister's office ever advise him that it was against the law to get in that helicopter and that riding on a private helicopter was against the law? Was he ever told this?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister and this government is responding to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. That's why this government is working hard for all Canadians. We will continue to work closer with provinces and territories and municipalities so that we can help make investments and create the growth Canadians need us to create. We will continue to do the good work they expect us to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians need to know if their Prime Minister didn't know the law or if he knew the law and he chose to ignore it. So again, I ask the Prime Minister, did anybody in his office, the PMO, or PCO at any point advise the Prime Minister that taking a ride in this helicopter, a private helicopter, was against the law? Was he advised that it was wrong?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Time and time again, the Prime Minister will answer any questions that the Commissioner has. What this Prime Minister and this government will also continue to do is to work hard for Canadians, to work hard for middle-class Canadians, to respond to the very real challenges that they are facing. We will continue to work closer and better with provinces and territories and municipalities. We will continue to make the investments to work harder for all Canadians so that we can strengthen and do the good work they need us to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Vancouver Kingswood.
Mr. Speaker, after the last election, there was hope that we would see a renewed collaborative approach to healthcare funding. But 18 months later, all we've seen is a divide and conquer tactic from this Liberal government, and 90% of Canadians remain with no national health accord. Shockingly, the Prime Minister's office says it's okay with this and that it has, quote, a high tolerance for failure for a pan-Canadian agreement. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to healthcare, Canadians do not have a high degree of tolerance for failure. So when will we see a new national health accord for all Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, it's an honour to rise in this House and talk about the collaborative relationship that I've had with the other federal health ministers. We agreed a year ago upon what the priorities should be and how they would like to see money invested. On that basis, we were able to come to them and say, yes, we will increase the Canada Health Transfer every single year. But in addition to that, we will act on those shared priorities that the other health ministers identified. And we were able to come to them with an offer to invest $11.5 billion, including an unprecedented investment of $5 billion for mental health care, to expand access to mental...
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, the government has again broken a promise to negotiate a long-term health agreement with the provinces. 5 provinces, including Quebec, still remain without an agreement, and the government had promised to be a partner with the provinces. But what we're seeing is their preference for wedge tactics. The offer on the table is inadequate and will not allow the provinces to maintain current services. Will the government finally listen to the provinces and conclude a long-term agreement that will enable them to provide Canadians with the services that they need?
La Santé.
The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I have had excellent discussions with my counterparts across the country. We have discussed the priorities for Canadians. We have talked about the Canadians having access to mental health, home care, and thanks to that, we have invested unprecedented levels, $11.5 billion. And in addition to that, we will be increasing the health transfer each year, and that is good news for Canadians.
Mr. Speaker, as we celebrate Canada's Agricultural Day this week, there's no better time to reflect on the importance of youth in agriculture. Whether it's helping youth attain the skills, support, and education they need for a bright future in agriculture or obtaining the ideas for the future of our family farms and rural communities, our government understands just how important their voice is. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture please inform the House on what he's doing to support youth in agriculture across this country? Thank you,
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, as the father of a young producer, I can assure you that we know that the future of Canadian agriculture involves young farmers. The Minister has discussed these issues across the country. We will continue to listen to producers and incorporate their comments into the strategic framework. We have invested significant amounts in over 4 years, and we have doubled loans to young farmers. We will continue to help our young producers to acquire the skills and support they need in order to help.
Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the deadly surge in the Russian-backed war in eastern Ukraine continues and shows signs of intensifying. Officials in Kyiv say that in recent days, at least 170 vehicles with munitions and 60 more with fuel crossed from Russia. Now, as the government of Ukraine waits anxiously for the Liberals to extend Operation Unifier, senior ministers are now asking that Canada supply anti-tank and other defensive weapons to counter the Russian-sponsored offensive. Mr. Speaker, why are the Liberals sitting on their hands?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and our government is aware of the situation, and it's very concerning to us, and certainly we strongly condemn the actions of the Russian-backed separatist forces in Ukraine. The Minister is in close contact with the ambassador in Kiev and recently spoke with the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, Pavlo Klimkin. The Minister also discussed the situation in Ukraine with Secretary of State Tillerson and Senator John McCain in Washington. Both the Minister of Defense and Minister of Foreign Affairs are currently evaluating how best to help our friend and ally Ukraine, including through Operation Unifier.
Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, last week we learned that Canada will be supplying Kurdish forces in Iraq with long-range sniper rifles, with mortar, with anti-tank weapons, with night vision devices, along with non-lethal aid. Why are the Liberals ignoring Ukraine's request for similar defensive weapon systems and expanded training as Russia escalates the conflict?
Honourable
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. We work closely with the Iraqi authorities for the implementation of our strategy with the consent of the government and in consultation with our coalition partners. Canada will provide equipment such as light arms, personal protective equipment, as well as optical equipment in order to help security forces in Iraq. This work is currently underway, and the delivery dates will be determined in conjunction with the government and will depend on the availability of the selected equipment.
Falkirk, Interlake,
Speaker,
Eastman.
Ukraine needs actual weapons, not platitudes. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are doubling down on cutting danger pay for our troops who are in the fight against ISIS and causing additional stress for their families back at home. This is the same government who admitted that the mission was getting more dangerous after they pulled out our CF-18s from the fight. Now, when our party was in the government, we instructed the military to continue to provide full benefits to our troops that were in Afghanistan. Will the Liberals finally do the right thing and restore full danger pay to our troops and their families?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Selkirk, Interlake, and Eastman for his question. We are committed to ensure our men and women in uniform are compensated for the outstanding work they do on operation. All Canadian Armed Force members deployed abroad are entitled to risk allowance that reflects the condition and risks that they are exposed to the specific location of their mission. The risk level of all operations, including Operation Impact, are continually reviewed to ensure members of the Canadian Armed Force are appropriate.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, The Liberals are the most hypocritical and crass people around. They're so courageous that they've imposed a gag on people knowing their schemes. They pushed out an honorary colonel.
J'encourage les députés.
I would encourage the member to use terms that will not cause such disruptions. And, well, I'll try, Mr. Speaker, to be more polite then. The Liberals aren't very nice. Is that better? They're so courageous that they've imposed a lifelong gag order on people aware of their schemes. They pushed out an honorary colonel, a veteran with more than 30 years, because he criticized the Liberals' stupid decision to buy outdated aircraft. So, in that light, what will they do to the people who... The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, honorary colonels are a part of the Canadian Armed Forces family. Their role is essentially one to provide mentoring, leadership, and esprit de corps in units across the country. As part in local communities, they use their experience and expertise to promote unity, etc. As a representative of the Department of National Defence, like all other serving members, honorary colonels must abstain from expressing political opinions. The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, the federal government promised to accelerate the putting in place of a Lake Megantic bypass. Unfortunately, we don't really know what those Liberal promises mean anymore. 3 years after the tragedy, 2 out of 3 citizens there are presenting with PTSD symptoms. So it's high time for the government to take some concrete action. So my question is very simple. Will the minister stop the empty statements and take action, specific action, to accelerate to the building of a bypass?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Transport.
I have been entrusted with the task of taking this action. That is why we're in discussion with the province of Quebec, as well as with the mayor of Lake Megantic and the company that's responsible for conducting the study on the bypass. Now, we realize that it's important to pick up the pace for the study, and we're working together to see how we're going to accomplish that. The Honourable Member for Musqueam-Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Communities in Madawaska and Témiscouata are in shock over the tragic death of Carl Jason Dunphy, the former gunner for the Canadian Forces who bravely served his country during 3 missions in Afghanistan. I offer my sincerest condolences to his family and loved ones. A few hours before he died, he left the following message on his Facebook page with respect to, he says, it's draining my resources. It's not up to my spouse to take responsibility for this when the department is not. What can the minister say? Will there be some kind of internal follow-up on this matter?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Our thoughts are with the family and friends and those impacted by this tragedy. It is deeply saddening to hear of anyone taking his or her own life. When it comes to suicide prevention, we always need to do better. Our government is committed to expanding access to support for veterans, RCMP, and their families. That is why we are working with over 4,000 registered mental health professionals, operate 11 operational stress injury clinics, and have been hiring frontline staff, 360 to date, to work with individuals. We also opened 9 offices and are expanding out health and support care.
Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Thank you, Speaker. In recent weeks, nearly 100 asylum seekers have illegally crossed the U.S. border into Canada, including 40 in Quebec this past weekend alone. While the government is in idle, border towns like Emerson, Manitoba, plead for government assistance as their resources are taxed by the influx, and people keep pouring in. Communities like Emerson are requesting more RCMP resources right now. When can the community expect help to enforce the law and maintain security?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as I'm sure the honourable gentleman knows,
The RCMP and the Canada Border Services Agency are very professional and proficient at what they do. They have been working very hard to deal with this situation right from the very beginning. They are well trained. They are making internal decisions with respect to the allocation of resources to make sure that they have the right people in the right places to do the job to protect Canadians and also to make sure of the health and safety of those who are traveling. If they require additional support or resources, I'm sure they will let us know.
Member for Niagara Falls.
Mr. Speaker, under our Conservative government, we always made judicial appointments a priority. Now, the Liberals have been in office for over a year, and there are now judicial vacancies everywhere in this country. As a result, there's over 800 criminal cases that are in jeopardy. These are cases that include attempted murder, manslaughter, and murder. This is exactly the kind of thing that destroys people's confidence in the criminal justice system. What will it take to get this government to make judicial appointments a priority?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Well, I'm happy to rise, Mr. Speaker, to talk about the judicial appointments that we have made and to further emphasize and look forward to the judicial appointments that we will continue to make. I'm pleased to have introduced a reconstituted judicial appointments process, reconstituted the judicial advisory committees to ensure that there is a diversity of individuals on those committees, to ensure that the appointments of judges will reflect the diversity and the face of our country. I look forward to making judicial appointments right across the country in our superior courts.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Justice committed last fall to filling the 60 judicial positions that are vacant across the country in order to reduce the unreasonable delays in the courts. However, only 24 positions have been filled since then, and that's insufficient. And as a result, many trials are being suspended, including ones that are as serious as murder and rape. When, therefore, will the minister finally keep her promise to respect and take into account victims and their families?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I rise to speak about the comprehensive review of the criminal justice system that we are undertaking. I'm very proud of the judicial appointments that I have made and will continue to make under a reconstituted judicial appointment process to ensure that we appoint the highest quality of jurists that reflect the diversity of the country. This will, in turn, assist with delays in our courts, but I will point out that it is not just simply judges that lead to delays. The administration of justice is a provincial and territorial responsibility, and I am committed to continuing to work in concert with my colleagues to address delays in the court.
The honourable member for Hull-Aylmer.
Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to supporting science and funding partnerships that lead to discoveries and the products of tomorrow. Today, I was at my alma mater, the University of Ottawa, and looking at research that, once achieved, will change the lives of Canadians by allowing everyday objects to become smart. La ministre des Sciences...
Can the Minister of Science inform this House of what our government, or where the government is making strategic investments to ensure that we support science, to encourage innovation, and to strengthen the middle class? The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou.
The Honourable Minister of Science.
Our government is committed to supporting science and basic research and applied research.
$50 million for projects is NSERC strategic partnerships that help connect companies with scientists who are advancing in research in areas where Canada is a world leader. From the water we drink, to the air we breathe, to the food we eat, to new technologies, support for science will help build a better future for Canadians.
And now then, the Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my riding, there are 200 officials working at the Canada Revenue Agency. These are people who are working very hard. So imagine, Mr. Speaker, they have bills to pay as well. However, for a year, the fiasco with the pay system is affecting them. They can't even get a simple update on their pay files. Now, What are they doing? Well, they're coming into my office to get assistance. The assistance that the Liberal government isn't giving them. When will the minister finally admit that she made a mistake by putting in place the system against the advice of many reports?
The Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And while the government's payroll system ensures that 300,000 employees get paid every 2 weeks, there are public service employees who are experiencing pay difficulties in some categories, and that is totally unacceptable. That is why we have taken additional measures by putting in satellite pay offices to help those employees. We encourage them to reach out to us. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the most recent office we put in was in Kingston. So we're working really hard on behalf of our employees.
Member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, both Conservative and Liberal governments have downloaded responsibility for Saskatchewan's environmentally critical grasslands without any concern for their future. These grasslands are unique ecological heritage sites. They act as important carbon sinks and are home to rare and threatened species. Now the government is considering giving away the last of these grasslands in southwestern Saskatchewan and ending the environmental protection they receive. Will the Minister of Environment commit today to create a new national wildlife area to preserve these ecosystems for future generations?
The Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I take very seriously the obligation to protect our natural environment. I am committed to working with the member on this issue to find a resolution.
The honourable member for Edmonton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Jordan's Principle was established following the death of Jordan River Anderson, a 5-year-old child, a member of the Norway House First Nation in Manitoba. This principle aims to resolve jurisdictional disputes and to ensure that children have care and when they need it, and the care that they need, in fact. In a renewed nation-to-nation relationship, there needs to be access across Canada, and the access to care needs to be timely. Can the Minister of Health inform this House of the steps she plans to take in order to implement the Jordan's Principle? I'd like to thank the member for Edmonton Centre for the question. Yesterday, our government announced $5 million to the new health consortium for First Nations in Alberta for coordination services in the province. As the head of the consortium, Tyler White, said, it will eliminate barriers facing First Nations on a daily basis. This initiative and others show that our government is implementing Jordan's Principle.
Banner, Frontenac, Kingston.
Mr. Speaker, the Democratic Institution Minister's mandate letter was made public on February 1st. So it's curious that the minister continues to be evasive about answering apparently innocuous questions about the date on which she received the mandate letter. One possible explanation might be that she doesn't want to admit that on January 31st, she was telling stakeholders the government was still open to changes to the electoral system, when in fact the decision to betray this promise was already known to her. After all, a week before her mandate letter was made public, she was in Cabinet arguing, passionately we're told, thanks to the Prime Minister's leak on this subject, against a referendum on electoral reform. So when did she get that mandate letter?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for his question. As my mandate letter was made public on February 1st, as it was to all Canadians that day, I was pleased to give a press conference on it at that time, and I reached out to stakeholders the day before because as Minister of Democratic Institutions, I believe it's important to engage with Canadians on all sides of the political spectrum. I continue to do that, and I will continue to do that moving forward. I look forward to implementing this mandate and working with everyone in this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 3 years ago in this place, we passed something called Lindsay's Law, an act to create a DNA database for missing persons. It's named Lindsay out of respect for the missing person known as, well, her name's Lindsay Nichols. Her mom's a friend of mine. She's a constituent. Judy Peterson fought like a tiger to get something that would allow law enforcement to compare the DNA at crime scenes with missing persons. And that bill was passed, but it was delayed, that it wouldn't come into effect till 2017. Now, Judy Peterson's been told there's an additional year's delay. Can the Minister for Public Safety tell us if he can stop there being a delay and bring it into force?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, we all share the pain of those whose loved ones have gone missing and we strongly support efforts to help law enforcement with missing persons investigations. This includes the creation of the DNA-based missing persons and victims data banks. We are in the final stages now of doing the necessary due diligence, both with respect to cost sharing and privacy protection. My goal is to have this system up and running before the end of this year.
One moment, we have a recognition first. As today we celebrate National Flag Day, and in light of Canada's 150th anniversary, I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of Mrs. Joan O'Malley. Mrs. O'Malley is the distinguished Canadian who sewed the first maple leaf flag ever flown. I've noticed of 3 points of order. I'll hear first from the member for Spadina, honourable member for Spadina, Fort York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in a point of order. As you know, Standing Order 18 protects all members of this House from offensive words spoken by any other member of this House. As we know, words and action carry weight. I'd like to bring the attention to events which took place yesterday during question period when the Minister of Infrastructure stated that he was a former bus driver. Yes. Members of the opposition began to laugh. I think I speak for many members of this House when I say that laughing at the previous employment status of a member of this House is offensive, especially when that service was done in public service to people of this country. Every member of this House deserves to represent their constituents. Every member's diversity of employment adds to the richness of this House, and I would ask that this statement be withdrawn, the laughter be withdrawn, and this record be corrected. This is offensive to the values of this House, to the values of Canadian, and to the diversity of all of us. Hear, hear.